It all started on a quiet Monday morning in late spring, the kind of day where nothing seems out of the ordinary, where the sun rises without drama, the birds chirp like clockwork, and the neighborhood moves at its usual peaceful pace. I had just come back from my morning jog, still in my sweatshirt and track pants, sipping on some warm black coffee out on my porch. Life had a rhythm, and I liked it that way. But that morning, something felt slightly off. Maybe it was the white SUV, parked 3 houses down, engine running for nearly an hour. Maybe it was the man who kept pacing in front of the Reynolds lawn, pretending to be on a call, but clearly looking around, watching people. I've worn the badge for nearly 25 years. As a county sheriff, you learn early how to trust your gut. That morning, my gut said something wasn't right, but I wasn't in uniform. I wasn't working. I was just a homeowner in a modest but tight-knit neighborhood. Still, I watched from a distance, keeping tabs on the strange SUV and the man who finally walked toward my property around 8:30 a.m., clipboard in hand. He was dressed in navy slacks, a black jacket with some kind of patch on it too generic to be official, and a badge that from a distance looked real. But up close, I could already tell. It was fake, hollow, shiny in a way that screamed prop. He walked right up to my gate, didn't even bother to ring the bell or knock. He pulled out his phone, snapped a few pictures of my garden beds and solar panels, and then started scribbling notes down on a sheet clipped to his board. I stepped out slowly, calm, collected. I asked him if he needed help with something. He looked up, didn't smile, and said, "You're in violation of Section 14 of the HOA's neighborhood codes regarding non-standard landscaping and unauthorized modifications." I raised an eyebrow. We didn't even have a strict HOA, just a small group of volunteers who occasionally sent newsletters and reminded folks to trim trees or not leave trash bins out too long. Nothing enforceable. Nothing like this. I asked for his name. He didn't give it. He said, "I'm with Code Enforcement. That's all you need to know." Then he handed me a yellow slip, supposedly a citation, but the font was off. The wording was vague. No signature, no letterhead. I asked him if he was affiliated with our HOA board. That's when he got defensive. Told me I was required to comply. That if I didn't, further action would be taken. I asked him what that action would be, and he leaned in, trying to sound authoritative, and said, "Next time I come back, it might be in cuffs." Cuffs. That's when it clicked. This wasn't some HOA volunteer overstepping. This was a full-blown impersonator. Still, I didn't show my hand. I played along, asked him what department he reported to. He said Neighborhood Code Security Division, which, by the way, doesn't exist anywhere in our county or state. I nodded, thanked him for the notice, and told him I'd review it. Then I watched him leave, walking back toward the SUV that had been sitting idle. There was someone else inside, looked like a woman, probably mid-30s, on a laptop. She didn't even look up as he got in. I snapped a few discreet pictures with my phone. The plates, the faces, the fake badge. Then I went back inside and called my deputy, Charlie. Told him to swing by and bring the database access with him. I wasn't going to let this slide. You see, I've dealt with HOA nuisances before, sometimes overzealous board members, sometimes nosy neighbors. But this was different. This was impersonation, possibly fraud. And these people were organized by the time Charlie arrived. I had already looked up the supposed Section 14 citation in our neighborhood guidelines. It didn't exist. Not even close. Charlie plugged the SUV plate number into the system and found nothing registered locally. Out-of-state tag, possibly fake. But we needed more than suspicion. We needed evidence. So I told Charlie to stay close for the next few days. Low profile. Just in case our fake officers decided to return. They did. 2 days later, this time there were 3 of them. Same SUV, same fake uniforms, and this time, one of them had a body cam clipped to their jacket. I watched from inside as they walked up to my porch like they owned the place. Didn't knock, just started posting a final violation notice to my door with red tape, filming the whole thing like some kind of reality show. I waited until they finished and turned to leave, then I stepped out and greeted them. I asked again, politely, who they were and what they were doing. The tallest one, the man from before, didn't even flinch. He said I was now under investigation for property code violations, and that failure to comply would result in my removal from the premises. I asked, under what authority? He flashed the same shiny badge and said, "I'm authorized by HOA Enforcement Unit 9. That's when I smiled. Unit 9. That's funny, I said, pulling out my actual badge from my sweatshirt pocket, because I run this entire county and I've never heard of you. The look on their faces. Priceless. The man took a step back. The woman in the group suddenly fumbled to turn off the body cam. The third one, younger guy, looked like he wanted to vanish into thin air. I held my ground, calm but firm. I told them they were now the ones violating several laws, impersonating an officer, issuing fraudulent citations, and possibly engaging in harassment and intimidation. I told them they needed to stay put while I called in uniformed backup. That's when they panicked. The woman ran back to the SUV. The tall man tried to talk his way out, claiming there had been a misunderstanding. I told him the only misunderstanding was thinking he could walk into my property and threaten me without facing consequences. They bolted, jumped into the SUV, and sped off. But what they didn't know was that Charlie had already been parked around the corner, dashcam running, and followed them with full lights once I gave the signal. It didn't take long. Less than 10 minutes later, they were pulled over a mile away, trying to toss their fake badges and citation slips into a roadside trash can. We recovered all of it: cameras, uniforms, fake documents. And what we found next shocked us even more. Turns out, this wasn't a one-time scam. The SUV had maps, addresses, a list of over 30 homes in the area, many belonging to elderly residents. These people were targeting vulnerable homeowners with intimidation tactics, trying to scare them into handing over money for fake citations or forced compliance payments. They had fake invoices ready. All they needed was fear. And sadly, it had already worked in at least 2 homes. We later found out 2 elderly couples had given them nearly $600 combined, thinking they were paying real HOA fines. That's what angered me the most. They didn't just try to scam me, they preyed on people who didn't know better, people who didn't have a sheriff living next door. And that's when I decided this wasn't just about my property. It was about protecting everyone on that list. We brought all 3 suspects in for questioning. The woman lawyered up immediately. The tall guy claimed he was part of a private enforcement group hired by the HOA, a complete lie. No such contract existed. The third one was young, scared, and the first to talk. He confessed that they'd run similar scams in 3 nearby counties. They dressed in uniforms, made citations look official, and filmed confrontations to use as proof in case anyone pushed back. I asked him one question: "Why us?" He said, "Because you live in a nice area. People assume HOA means power, and most won't question it." That one sentence said everything. But I wasn't about to let it end there. After we brought the 3 suspects in, the weight of what they had done started to come into clearer focus. It wasn't just about my property anymore. The scam was far more elaborate than I first imagined. They had been operating across counties for several months, impersonating HOA officers, targeting elderly homeowners, single mothers, and anyone who seemed unlikely to question authority. They would come in with their fake badges, issue false citations, and intimidate people into paying immediate fines. As sheriff, I'd dealt with impersonators before, but this one was different because of how systematic it was. These weren't random one-offs or pranksters. They had a method. They scoped out neighborhoods with weak or volunteer-run HOAs, downloaded community guidelines, and then printed their own official-looking citation slips with random section numbers. That sounded legal but didn't exist. Their favorite tactics included telling homeowners they were in violation for things like unauthorized landscaping, non-standard exterior modifications, or vehicle visibility infractions. Words that sounded serious but had no grounding in local law. And it worked. Because when someone knocks on your door with a badge and a clipboard and they start talking fast, you freeze. Especially older folks. They don't want trouble. They just want peace. So they pay. As the youngest suspect confessed, he gave us names, locations, even audio recordings they had taken to back up their claims in case a resident called the cops. They kept everything documented so they could pressure people faster. One of the audio files made my blood boil. It was a recording of a woman, probably in her 70s, trying to explain that her front yard had always had that bench, that it wasn't a new addition, and the fake officer telling her that non-compliance would result in forced removal. She ended up giving them $250 on the spot. That was when I knew I had to take it further. I called a special meeting with the mayor and the county legal board. I presented the evidence, explained the scam, and made a plan to notify every neighborhood association in the region. We would educate residents about their rights, expose the fake citations, and get ahead of this scheme. But while that was happening, the legal wheels had to turn slowly. The 3 suspects were held for questioning, but we had to gather more to get the full picture. So I started working with the district attorney to build a rock-solid case. Fraud, impersonating an officer, unlawful collection of funds, harassment, even elder abuse charges. If we did this right, they wouldn't walk out with just a slap on the wrist. Meanwhile, word had already started spreading in our neighborhood. One of my neighbors, Mr. Jenkins, who lived 2 houses down, came by to say he had received a citation 2 weeks prior, but had been too embarrassed to say anything. He showed me the notice, same font, same wording, same fake badge seal. He'd paid $150 cash and never told his wife. I told him the truth, that he'd been scammed, but that he wasn't alone, and we were doing something about it. By the end of the week, 5 more residents came forward. Some had been visited. Others had gotten slips posted on their doors, but hadn't answered. Every time, the story was the same: false violations, intimidating language, demands for immediate cash or online payment. The fake officers would even threaten to bring law enforcement if the payment wasn't made within 48 hours. Imagine the irony, threatening to call someone like me. Now, I wasn't just responding as a sheriff, I was angry as a neighbor, as someone who had watched my community get preyed upon by opportunists who wore fake badges and thought no one would stand up to them. So I stood up. We printed posters and flyers warning people about the impersonators. We held a community meeting in the local park. I stood in front of everyone, mothers, fathers, seniors, in lawn chairs, young couples, and I told them exactly what had happened. I explained how these people had faked their authority and relied on fear. I told them how to spot the signs, what to do if someone knocked on their door, and how to report it immediately. We created a direct phone line for suspicious HOA activity. I even partnered with 2 local news stations to get the word out. Within 2 days of the broadcast, we received reports from other towns that the same crew or copycats had been operating there too. This was bigger than just our neighborhood. Back at the station, the suspects were being processed and interrogated by our team. The younger man, his name was Tyler, broke down after 2 hours. Said he only joined the scam because he needed money after losing his job, that he thought it would be easy money, that he didn't expect to get caught. He even tried to apologize, saying, "You looked like a regular guy. We didn't know you were a sheriff." I stared at him, not with anger, but with disappointment. I told him, "It shouldn't matter who I am. You scared good people into giving you money. That has consequences." The other 2, Derek and Angelo, were less remorseful. Derek kept trying to defend the operation, saying they were enforcing local standards, that they were doing the job no one else would. Angela claimed they were collecting fees on behalf of homeowners, but she couldn't provide a single signed document showing any legal authority. They were grifters, plain and simple. I filed my report with every piece of evidence we had. Photos, videos, forged documents, plate numbers, body cam footage, victim testimonies, and financial records showing the deposits they'd made after each visit. It was enough for the DA to start formal charges. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. But that didn't mean the job was done. In the meantime, I worked with the HOA board to establish a clear communication system for our residents. From now on, any official notice would come with a unique QR code that led to the HOA's verified page. Any HOA visit would be preceded by a notice through our new secure messaging board. No surprise visits, no random badges. Everything would be trackable. One thing the whole situation revealed was just how easy it is for someone to fake authority. A cheap uniform, a shiny badge from a novelty store, a confident attitude. That's all it takes to trick people who trust systems. So we made it our mission to teach everyone how to verify what's real. Ask for full names. Check for ID numbers. Call the HOA office before agreeing to anything. Don't hand over money, unless it's through the official payment portal. Meanwhile, Charlie and I stayed on the lookout. We started patrolling in plain clothes through different neighborhoods, looking for signs of similar scams. We found another group of imposters, 2 counties over, same tactics, different team. It was a growing problem. But now we were ready. By the end of the 2nd week, we'd recovered over $3,000 in scammed funds. We were able to return the money to 6 households. More people were calling in every day with questions, checking documents, double-checking visits. It was working. The fear was turning into awareness. And I could sleep better knowing my neighbors were no longer vulnerable to wolves in uniforms. But then something unexpected happened. I received an anonymous envelope at the station. Inside was a flash drive, no return address. Just the words, "Watch this," on a sticky note. I plugged it into a secure station laptop. The file was a video recording taken from what looked like a dashboard camera, showing another impersonation incident in a completely different state. A man dressed in a fake HOA uniform confronting a family at their home, using the same exact language. The license plate was different, the vehicle was different, but the script was the same, word for word. Section 14, Non-Standard Landscaping, Immediate Action. It was like they were all reading from the same manual. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a group of 3 scammers, this was part of something bigger, maybe even a network. And I had only scratched the surface. When I finished watching that dashcam video on the flash drive, I sat back in my chair and exhaled slowly. The same phrases, the same structure, the same threats. It wasn't just similar, it was scripted. Someone had created a template. That meant these scammers weren't just a small-time crew working on their own. They were following a model. And if they were, that model was probably being sold, shared, or trained somewhere. I brought it straight to the DA and our cybercrime unit. They dug into the metadata of the video and traced it back to an online server registered in Nevada. Not exactly a smoking gun, but enough of a lead to start looking deeper. What we uncovered next wasn't something we were prepared for. There was a whole network operating across multiple states, forums, dark web communities, and private groups, trading tips on how to impersonate HOA officers, code enforcers, and even health department workers. They had downloadable templates, fake badge designs, speech guides, and even pre-made citations with blank spaces to fill in local addresses. Some of the forums bragged about how easy it is to get paid if you sound official and wear the right clothes. They were literally coaching people to con their way into neighborhoods. The deeper we looked, the darker it got. The cyber team found multiple payment transactions linked to prepaid cards, cash apps, and digital wallets used by similar scammers. In at least 6 different states, some were hitting trailer parks, others were targeting immigrant communities. Most were preying on people unlikely to call the police or fight back. It was a full-scale operation, and now it was personal. I called. In a regional meeting with sheriffs from neighboring counties, we coordinated a task force to crack down on these impersonation scams. Within a few days, more victims came forward, more suspects were identified, and more evidence came pouring in. But back in our own county, something strange happened. A new crew showed up, different faces, different car, same fake uniforms. They hit a neighborhood 3 miles from mine. Gated community, quiet, mostly retirees. They knocked on doors, claimed the HOA had revised its bylaws, and demanded that homeowners remove wind chimes, bird feeders, and even lawn ornaments. One couple, both in their 70s, complied immediately. Another refused and called the real HOA board, who confirmed they hadn't sent anyone. But by the time officers arrived, the fake enforcers were gone. This crew was smarter. They didn't linger. They stayed less than 10 minutes at each home, didn't accept payments on the spot, and only gave out digital instructions with QR codes. We traced one of those codes, and it led to a phishing website made to look like an HOA portal. Anyone who entered their name and address would have their information stolen. This was bigger than just money. This was identity theft, property fraud, and organized manipulation all wrapped into one. The fake officers were adapting. That meant we had to be smarter, faster, and more coordinated. I called an emergency press conference. We aired the full story, told the public what was happening, who to watch for, and how to protect themselves. We showed samples of fake citations, fake uniforms, fake websites. I reminded everyone that no HOA representative has the power to fine you on the spot or enter your property without prior written notice in, certainly not to threaten arrest. That's when the phone calls started coming in, hundreds of them. People from across the state, people who'd been confused, scared, harassed. Some had paid, some had been threatened, and some had just wondered if they were overreacting. But now they knew the truth, that they weren't alone, that their gut feeling was right. One call in particular stuck with me. A widow named Grace, living alone in a quiet suburb just outside the city. She said the men had come to her door, claimed her porch railings were out of code, and told her she had to pay $100 or face a lien. She paid. Then they came back a week later and asked for more. She refused. That night, someone threw a brick at her window. She was terrified. We sent a team out immediately, helped her install security cameras, launched a full investigation, and I made her a promise. We're going to get them. This wasn't just about impersonation anymore. This was bullying, extortion, elder abuse, organized crime. We gathered everything: victim statements, photos, video recordings, digital footprints. Every thread we pulled led to more layers. Some of these groups were operating out of abandoned properties, renting fake uniforms online, and using disposable phones to avoid tracing. They were smart but not smart enough. One day, I got a call from Charlie. He had been following a new lead, another SUV with fake tags, seen cruising around a newer development north of the city. When he approached them in plain clothes, they took off. A high-speed chase followed, and eventually, the suspects abandoned the car and ran into the woods. But we caught one of them. And when we searched the SUV, we hit the jackpot. Inside were files, printed spreadsheets with neighborhood names, homeowner profiles, notes on when people were usually home, which houses had security systems, and who might be easy to pressure. They had been watching us, studying us. It felt like a war, not with guns, but with fear, with lies, and I had no intention of letting them win. I took that data straight to the state attorney general. I told them we needed more resources, more visibility. This wasn't just a local scam, it was crossing county and state lines. We needed to treat it like a criminal ring, not isolated events. Thankfully, they listened. In the meantime, I kept doing what I knew best, protecting my people. We printed brochures, launched ads, held community workshops. I visited neighborhood meetings in person. I answered questions. I reassured scared residents. I reminded them, you have the right to ask for ID, you have the right to say no, you have the right to call the real police, and most importantly, are not alone. Then one night, I got another anonymous package. No return label. Inside was a second flash drive. This time, the footage was clearer. It showed a man, tall, sunglasses, black jacket, speaking into a camera, teaching someone how to impersonate an HOA enforcer. He gave tips: how to walk, what to say, how to intimidate. He even said, people trust the badge more than they trust themselves. I froze. I recognized his voice. It was Derek. The same man we had arrested during the first incident at my house, except now, I realized he wasn't just a follower, he was a trainer, a recruiter. This wasn't just some rogue job for cash. He had been teaching others how to run the same scam across the country. I called the DA immediately. We reopened the investigation into Derek's background. Turns out, he had used multiple identities across state lines, had prior fraud charges dismissed years ago, and had spent time overseas working private security gigs. But none of it stuck. He was careful. Too careful, until now. We had him on video. Teaching, impersonation, coaching, fraud, running an underground system. It was time to bring it all down. With that video in hand, the one where Derek was clearly coaching others to commit impersonation, we finally had the kind of evidence that went beyond local enforcement. This wasn't just a case of one man running his own scam. This was organized, fraud, with intent, with structure, with the kind of reach that crossed state lines. And that meant it was time to bring in the big guns. I contacted the regional FBI office. I shared everything we had: audio recordings, spreadsheets, fake citation designs, and now this video showing Derek actively training others. They didn't hesitate. Within days, they opened a case file under interstate fraud and impersonation. Derek, who was still out on bail awaiting court for the original charges, didn't know we had reopened the investigation with a much bigger scope. He thought he had slipped through the cracks, that the system was slow, distracted, or simply overwhelmed. But what he didn't count on was a sheriff who took things personally, who wasn't just protecting a jurisdiction, but his neighbors, his people. We worked in silence over the next week, building the case. Meanwhile, the community stood stronger than ever. Word had spread. Nobody was falling for the scam anymore. People were demanding IDs, recording interactions, calling the sheriff's office the moment something felt off. We had turned fear into awareness, and awareness into strength. But Derek wasn't done. He tried again. This time, he sent 2 new recruits to another neighborhood. This time, in another county. They showed up in a different vehicle, different uniforms, but same lines. Violation of Code Section 18. Unauthorized fencing. We need to inspect your backyard. But the homeowner wasn't just anyone. She was a retired federal investigator. She stalled them, acted confused. Let them talk. Then she asked them to wait a moment so she could find the paperwork. She walked inside, locked the door, and called the sheriff. Deputies arrived within minutes. The 2 fakes tried to walk away, but it was too late. They were arrested on the spot. One of them had Derek's instructions in their car, word for word, including a list of homes to visit, tactics to use, even a warning: be careful in Franklin County. One of their people is the actual sheriff. That note made it clear Rick knew exactly who I was. He just didn't care. Until we made him care with the new arrests. The FBI fast-tracked a warrant for Derek's home and digital devices. When the team went in, they found exactly what we expected and more. Hard drives filled with footage from other scam attempts, templates for fake IDs, invoices, even documents impersonating health inspectors, utility agents, and housing board officials. This guy was a full-on fraud ring. There were email logs connecting him to other individuals in 3 different states. He'd created a network, sold these fake HOA kits for hundreds of dollars each to others willing to run the scam in their own cities. He offered support through encrypted chat apps. The scam was bigger than we thought. But now, we had the entire operation in our hands. Derek was arrested again, this time under federal charges. His bond was revoked, and he was held without bail. The trial would take time, but the message was already loud and clear. It was over. His scheme, his training, his manipulation, all of it was exposed. Back home, people began to feel safe again. Grace, the widow, who had the brick thrown at her window, called me in tears just to say thank you. So did Mr. Jenkins and the elderly couple who had been forced to remove their wind chimes. It was more than just law enforcement, it was healing. It was restoring a sense of control to people who had felt violated in their own homes. We continued to educate neighborhoods, working with HOAs across the region to set up real verification systems. Every board got training on what to look for, how to communicate with residents, and most importantly, how to never let authority be abused. If someone came knocking, they'd better have real credentials, a real purpose, and a real heart for the community, not a script written by some scam artist. The media picked up the story. Sheriff exposes fake HOA crime ring. It went viral for a few days. People across the country reached out with stories of their own. Some had been scammed, others had always been suspicious. The more we talked, the more light we shined on a problem that had been hiding in plain sight. One evening, I was walking down my street, no uniform, just me and my dog, when a young girl waved from her porch. Her father stepped out and said, "Thanks for what you did." We were scared for a while, but not anymore. I smiled and nodded. That was enough. That moment, that peace. That's why I wore the badge. Not for power, not for praise, but to protect, to serve. to stand between the wolves and the people they prey on. A month later, I testified in court against Derek. I told the jury what I saw, what I experienced, and what we uncovered. I showed them the video where he laughed about how easy it was to scam homeowners. I looked him in the eye and said, "You came to my house with a fake badge. You threatened the wrong man." The jury didn't take long. Guilty on multiple counts: wire fraud, identity theft, impersonating a public official, elder abuse, conspiracy. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. But more than the sentence, it was the message that mattered. We will not be intimidated. We will not be fooled. And we will not allow criminals to wrap themselves in fake authority to scare decent people into silence. Today, our neighborhoods are stronger. Our people are more alert. Our HOA boards are better prepared. And every time someone knocks on a door with a clipboard and a badge, they'll have to think twice, because this time, the man on the porch just might be the real sheriff. And I'll always be watching. Because where I come from, we don't run from fake threats. We expose them, we end them, we bring justice, and we protect our own.